Hey, Alabama basketball fans. Welcome back after a long hiatus to our latest episode of the Blue Collar Podcast. Unfortunately, much like Alabama basketball, we've kind of fell into a little bit of an injury bug ourselves. So, our apologies on that. We really wanted to come to you last week and preview the Arkansas game, but just due to some sickness and things like that, the last 2 weeks have been pretty rough. But the good news is we are back. We don't foresee any issues now. We're going to make the haul for the rest of the season. Emilee, I'm so sorry about the 2 week hiatus. I hope you're doing well because I know you were sick 2 weeks ago and I was sick last week.
We're back on the mend. If our injuries meant more help for Alabama basketball, which it seems like that was the correlation, then so be it. Here we are. We're back and better, and we're peaking at the end of February, which is exactly what we're supposed to be doing.
Well, you know what? Some people may say, look, they went on this big winning streak and you had no podcast. And I was like, I don't know now. I don't know if I like that correlation, but we'll see.
Hey, we just had back-to-back idle weeks.
Yeah, true. How about
Yeah.
that? We had our own personal bye weeks. We can call it that. All right. So obviously a lot has happened. For those that have missed us, I am Michael Southern from Tide Hoops History. I'm your host, joined with my co-host Emilee Smarr from the Tuscaloosa News and TideSports.com. All right, Emilee. So in the time that we have been off the air or off the podcast universe, Alabama's reeled off a nice 6 game winning streak. Now, I won't say who saw that coming, but obviously the schedule softened up just a little bit, but they still took care of business. I want to get your opinions on this one. Obviously, we know the Arkansas game was an instant classic, double overtime, crazy game, dares they cuff. But in this 6 game run, give me two players outside of LeBaron Philon that have been crucial in this 6 game run by Alabama.
Aiden Shrell, no doubt about that one. And in my opinion, Latrell Wrightsell. I think that Latrell's heating up right when he's supposed to. 2 games with 7 3-pointers. That's only been done so many times. And, for Latrell to be doing that before March Madness even begins, I think that that's going to be major, just moving forward down the stretch. But again, just going back to Aiden Sherrill, too, I think that he has put this team on his shoulder. He was already doing it before Charles Bediako came back. But now that, obviously after today's update, all of that is up in the air. But when Charles Bediako's ruling came back and he was no longer eligible to play, Aiden just takes it one step further and he carries that much more weight. And we're seeing him put in more minutes than he has, in his entire career. And I think that he's handling it incredibly well. But, he's, again, just continuing to bring the rim protection that Alabama needs, but also just stepping up a lot offensively, too. Back-to-back double-doubles in these last couple of games. So great to see the sophomore continuing to grow and proof that Nate Oates can develop big men.
Well, this his development is something we both talked about quite a bit in our preseason preview. We said one of the big keys is Aiden Sherrill is going to have to take it to the next level. Now, I never imagined or thought that we would see a game that Aiden Sherrill was going to play almost 39 minutes. But that's what happened against Arkansas, and he was a warrior. And you know what? Let me ask you this. Outside of the fact that he went 39 minutes, the other most impressive thing to me was that he played like most of that second half in overtime with 4 fouls and didn't foul
Mm-hmm.
out. So that to me was just even more impressive outside of everything else. But I agree with you. I like what Aiden has done. Now we just have to keep the fingers crossed that he stays 100% healthy because there's not much depth behind him. Unfortunately, we kind of see we know Noah's going to play, but I was hoping that Noah would be able to give you more like 6 to 8 minutes, not 3 to 5. So
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts right now from what you've seen out of Noah when he comes off the bench?
It's just a continued work in progress. And, maybe it is just going to be one of those situations where what we see moving forward is just a legacy game when Alabama really needs it. Maybe we're just saving it all up for just these, 1 game spurts. And I think that that's about where I stand with the Noah Williamson situation because it's really not great. I don't want to say too much and go into too deep, but I it's going to be another portal find for Alabama next year for sure. Let's put it that way.
Well, there's one player I want to touch upon in this win streak too. So I think you got the two most important ones outside of LeBaron Philon with Aiden Sherrill and Latrell Wrightsell. But I have really liked, even though the scoring has not been there, I really still like what we're seeing out of London Jemison in the starting role
Absolutely.
these last
Yeah.
couple of games. And he seems to be more aggressive. He's attacking both inside. He was already shooting the threes when he was open, but I seen him go to the rim with some authority, and I like what I've seen
Hmm.
from that. I really think over the next 3 to 4 weeks, if you still get that same intensity and he develops just a little bit more, I think he's a key person for Alabama to do what they want to do and hopefully get the seeds that they want to get. I don't know. What are your thoughts on what you've seen out of
For
London these
sure.
last 2 weeks?
Based on the trajectory that he's at right now, I could see him having a really good tournament for Alabama. And I think that that'll be critical, especially with, the front courts that Alabama could face moving forward. But yeah, just the way that he's playing, the effort, I don't know. It just seems like these freshmen, just even aside from London Jemison, have this kind of effortlessness and fearlessness on the court. It's so much fun to watch them play with, and it's so much fun to watch them continue to grow. And I don't think that London's done growing anytime soon because he was already showing a lot of his upside before he ended up going down with injury. I can't remember was it a leg injury? There are just so many, it's hard to keep straight,
That's
honestly.
true. You're right about that. Well, we don't need him to get one now because he's basically, filling the gap of Taylor Bowen. So
Exactly.
you don't want that to happen. So
So even at the end of the day, I still think, regardless of what happens, once Taylor Bowen is healthier, and I'm assuming that he would move back into that starting spot more, I think that this is great experience for London moving forward at minimum.
you know what? I don't know about that. If London keeps
This is true.
progressing, he may hold on to that starting spot regardless of the health status of Taylor Bowen. Doesn't mean that Taylor won't play,
Hmm.
but I think the coaching staff likes what they're seeing right now to their two freshmen in that starting lineup. But anyways,
Absolutely.
we'll see. It's hard to believe that the season's down to 2 weeks and then that's it before we hit the SEC tournament. Now, one of the things I wanted to touch upon is, on Saturday the NCAA released their first official seedings. If the tournament had started that weekend, the top 16 seeds were out there. And what I found a little interesting was while almost every bracketologist out there had Alabama slotted in as a pretty decently secured number 4 seed, the
Hmm.
NCAA tournament or the NCAA committee did not. And they came out and said that they had both Alabama and Arkansas as potential 5 seeds, but they did not make the first cut of the protected seeds. So look, they can say that they're not going to take any punitive damage against Alabama or punishment for playing Charles Bediako, but I don't know. Maybe just the conspiracy theorist in me. I sense a little retribution in that first draft. I don't know. Am I wrong? Do you see Alabama as a solid 4 seed?
I personally see Alabama as a solid 4 seed. No question about that for me at this point with how they've been playing. I think if they can finish out the regular season with the momentum that they've had, no doubt that they're a 4 seed. But I think that there are things about this team that the committee could blame leaving Alabama out or leaving Alabama out as a protected seed on, if that's making sense. Like kind of in the same way that the just football reference, but that the committee was able to leave out Florida State after a perfect season. You blame it on Jordan Travis's broken legs. We are at risk of seeing that potentially happen again. That being said, though, in court ordered documents, well, excuse me, not court ordered documents, but in court orders and documents, the message has been consistent that the NCAA cannot penalize Alabama in any way, shape, or form for playing Charles Bediako. But as I said before, I don't necessarily think that there aren't other reasons that they couldn't knock Alabama out of being a top 4 seed.
Well, this predates you before you were covering the team and predates probably a lot of the people that listen to this podcast. For the older group, there has been some egregious seedings handed out by the NCAA when it comes to Alabama basketball. I'll just leave it at that. So we will see how everything plays out over the next 4 games in the SEC tournament. I personally think, unless Alabama has a total collapse, they should be a 4 seed. And I really think the window is still there. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I still think the window's there that potentially they might be able to play their way into a 3 seed. But a lot's got to happen before that comes along. We
Definitely.
would, yeah, we would be remiss too also if we didn't talk about obviously the Charles Bediako situation. There was some more news that you published today. Can you kind of give us the latest update on Charles? Now there's a second round of legal activity pending.
Yeah, so he's appealing the decision, and now it's going to the Alabama Supreme Court. So we're going to be going back to court, I would imagine. And also, while the appeal is being reviewed by the Alabama Supreme Court, they are asking for injunctive relief, which means that should this court or should this request be approved, Bediako would be allowed to play with Alabama in the meantime while his appeal is being resolved. And that decision is actually going to be, from my understanding, that decision will be made by Judge Daniel Pruitt, who is the judge who denied Bediako's initial injunction to begin with.
Is there any, did they give any idea of what a time frame might be for this? Are we talking about they're hoping to get some kind of decision here this week, or are we talking next week? I mean,
Yeah,
it's also
okay. So there's not really a time frame for when the or when the request for interim relief would come in.
okay.
But in the document, they noted that, obviously the regular season ends on March 7th. SEC tournament begins after that. NCAA tournament begins after that. They made the point that in the time that it is going to take for this appeal to be resolved, if Charles isn't able to play, it's basically going to be moot, quote for quote, what they said. So I think that it's going to be pretty fast moving, I would imagine, as far as what we see for I'm assuming that it would be a temporary restraining order that would be coming out that would be allowing him to play while it's being reviewed by the Supreme Court. But yeah, I would assume that would probably hit the judge's desk tomorrow morning. So that's my guess for when we're going to get a
Okay.
decision on that. So maybe we'll know before Mississippi State, but at
Okay.
the same time, maybe we don't know until Auburn.
That's almost 2 weeks from now. That's a week and a half from now if it's all the way to the Auburn game. So that's going to be very
Mm-hmm.
something yet again outside the normal practices and injury report to keep up with to see what may or may not affect the Alabama lineup. So very interesting. Now, as we record this is a Monday night. Coach Oates had his usual Nate Oates show on Hey Coach. I know you listened to it. Can you give everybody at least an update on what he mentioned? Because he did reveal some injury statuses for everyone.
Yes, although he did not respond to the Charles Bediako situation, which I'm sure that he will have to respond to tomorrow in press conferences, unless they direct us to not ask questions about it. He did say that nobody got injured in practice today. So 2 days out from the game, that's good. We love to hear
That,
that.
that is good.
So a step in the right direction. But other than that, more stuff that we love to hear. Well, I guess in this case, not here because he didn't give us injury updates, but no injury updates. So
Oh, okay.
I'm assuming that Keaton Bristow will probably still be out because Oates did make it clear a few weeks ago that he thought that Alabama had all of the players that it was going to have for the rest of the season. So I don't know that we're going to see Keaton. But other than that, I think that they're pretty fully loaded. Maybe LeBaron shows up as probable because Oates mentioned that he was still dealing with some injury. He wasn't at 100%, but he wasn't at 100% for the last game either, and he ended up playing. So,
Well, here's a wild question. If LeBaron's still not 100%, is there any chance they decide to rest him against Mississippi State? Or do you think that's maybe like just a 1% chance he's going to play regardless?
I think that we maybe get him on a minutes restriction. Maybe
That
we
makes
see
sense.
less LeBaron and we see more Jaleel Bethea. Because he has been using Jaleel a little bit more lately, not more than like 4 minute stints, but it's more than he was getting. So I do think that, we're going to see maybe some more minutes from some of the other guards against Mississippi State for sure.
All right. So let's go to what I kind of talked about earlier in the podcast. So we're down to the last 2 weeks, 4 games left. You have 2 at home, 2 on the road. You get Mississippi State this Wednesday, late tip off, 8 o'clock. And then this Saturday, you're at Knoxville. And then you have a quick turnaround. You're in Athens against Georgia. And then, of course, you finish everything with Auburn. As I was looking at this, to me, obviously, the absolute floor or the floor expectation for this would be no worse than 2-2. But to me, 2-2 is still disastrous. I don't think anybody wants that from Alabama. middle ground, 3-1, and then
Mhm.
obviously, it's still out there. They could go 4-0. How do you see it? Because the way I'm playing it in my head, I'm not going to take Mississippi State for granted. They're going to have to play and be sharp and win that game. If they beat Mississippi State, to me, that Tennessee game Saturday is as important as this Arkansas game was last week.
Absolutely.
That is a swing game. I am of the mind that if they lose to Tennessee, they may just, it's such a short turnaround. They may go into Athens and get another loss. That's what really concerns me. So I'm very confident that Tennessee game is a huge swing game on how this season plays out for Alabama. As we joked about off camera, our prediction of 14-4 is still theoretically alive for their SEC record. But how do you see these last four games? What are your thoughts, and what is your gut telling you about the finish for these next four games?
Yeah, I think they go 3-1. My prediction is lose at Tennessee, maybe go overtime at Georgia,
Oh, okay.
and I think win at home against Auburn. Also, that kind of went without saying, but I think that they take Mississippi State once again. So I'm pretty sure that that was my prediction
In the
before the
preseason?
season. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure. I think I said 2-0 against Mississippi State. I want to
I,
say.
I will say this, as we've talked about earlier about the NCAA seeding. I said, theoretically, Alabama could still potentially play their way into number three seed. I think the only way that happens is they're going to have to run the table. They're going to have to go
Mhm.
4-0 and finish as the standalone number two team in the SEC standings, granted behind Florida, but that means they're not tied with anybody. I really think that if they were to do that, finish 14-4, be the overall number two team in the SEC, unless they just bomb out on that Friday in the SEC tournament, I think that might be good enough to get them to a three seed.
Agreed.
Now, yeah, if they lose, if they go 3-1, then I think they're probably pretty much settled at a four seed. I don't see them recovering from that. Even if let me say this: if they were to win the SEC tournament, and that's a big if, I think if they went 3-1 and won the SEC tournament, that still might be enough to do it. But I I would rather them just go ahead and run the table and win the next four and put it to bed. I don't know. Real quickly, let's talk about the game that's at hand, Mississippi State. We know how good Josh Hubbard is. I
Mhm.
mean, you saw what he did against Auburn. We know how he can score, and we saw what Darius Acuff Jr. did against Alabama. What are your biggest concerns about Mississippi State? Is it just find a way to slow down Josh Hubbard and you'll be okay?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that it's how many guys can you throw at Josh Hubbard and for how long? I definitely think that the rest that Alabama had coming into this one was much needed, especially after you could tell that they were worn down for the win at LSU, especially after, nearly 3 hours against Arkansas. So I do think that basically just how long can you last against Josh Hubbard is going to be the biggest question here.
As we said, the last 2 weeks, there's still a lot of drama involved, and we still don't know how things are going to play out. And in addition to that, we'll still have this week's news coming out about potential injuries, hopefully not, and maybe more legal information or more legal news that pops out. So, as always, it will not be a boring week when it comes to Alabama basketball. In fact, it hasn't been a boring week all year. So, let's just say the drama has been there and the intrigue has been there. As always, Emilee, since it's been 2 weeks since we both have done a podcast, please make sure to tell everyone how to follow you and keep up with all your good work. And I know you had a really cool story about a couple people who actually saw Pistol Pete when you went for all those points in Coleman Coliseum, or then Memorial Coliseum, not Coleman.
No, Darius Acuff definitely had a well-timed, high-scoring performance for Arkansas to help me kind of stretch out some more longevity with that story on LSU former Pete Maravich's 69-point performance against Alabama. So I think that that was a really fun story for me to write. Obviously, talk to a fan in the stands, the ball boy who just so happened to be CM Newton's son, Martin Newton. I thought that was a really fun account. And then I was able to get a last minute interview with Jimmy Holland, the last player to guard Pete Maravich. So that was super, super fun to do. But yeah, you can definitely check that story out on my social media platforms. Posted it on X earlier today. You can find me there at Emilee_Smarr. And of course, you can find me on Instagram, Emilee_Smarr_reporter, and on Tuscaloosa News as well. just go to the staff directory, click my name, and you can find all my bylines there.
Well, as always, we have a lot more good stuff coming up. Please follow, if you like this, please follow us, like, subscribe on the Crimson Crossover YouTube channel. I promise you, we will be back next week. All things given, we should be healthy, ready to go because, look, we want to finish strong. We got a lot of fun things coming up. We're going to have the SEC tournament. We're going to plan some fun things there from the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. And then beyond that, hopefully a deep run in the NCAA tournament. But before we even get to that, let's see how Alabama does this week against Mississippi State and Tennessee. And then we'll be back next week to recap that and look ahead to the final week of the regular season. As I always joke with her, she can't say it, but I will say it every single time. Roll Tide, and we will see you again next week.